Chapter 5. Candace had just finished her lunch when her pager went off. After glancing down at it, she threw her trash away and headed down to the ER. "What's going on?" she asked the nurse on duty as she entered the area. "We think we might have a case of INCAV." The woman's eyes were large and filled with fear. "They've put him in isolation, and Julie is gathering up your gear." "Right." Conflicting emotions flooded Candace. Common sense told her that she was prepared for this, that she had trained for this. But fear dominated that thought. Fear of the unknown. There was still so little they knew about this virus, and what she had seen on the media made it out to be the worst killing machine in modern history. No, she couldn't let fear control her. She knew how to keep herself safe, or as safe as she could, and she'd found Jesus again. Even if it was her time, it just meant she would see Phil again that much sooner. With a swift nod at the nurse, Candace continued to the isolation area. Sure enough, Julie was waiting outside, already geared up, with more gear for Candace on a table beside her. Most of her face was covered with a mask, but fear radiated around her like a palpable mist. "What do we have?" Candace asked as she began the process of suiting up with Julie. Not only did she need the information, but her hope was that the conversation would ease both their minds. 40-year-old man complained of cough and fever, tested at 101.3, confirmed that he had been out of the country in the last 2 weeks. I've already tasked one of the other nurses with trying to find out who all he came in contact with during that time. He lives alone and said he came in when it grew hard for him to breathe. I've taken a swab and sent it to the lab for analysis. Unfortunately, I guess this means I'm under quarantine until my test comes back." Candace could hear the sadness in Julie's voice. She knew Julie had children at home. They were younger, and while her husband would be there, Candace couldn't imagine how hard it must be to know she couldn't go home to her kids. Candace placed a gloved hand on Julie's arm. "Hey, it will be okay. We'll rush your test and you'll be home in no time. I'll handle everything else for him so that once you're cleared, you can go home, okay?" Julie sucked in a deep breath and nodded. Candace did the same. Then she turned to the isolation door and entered the room into territory unknown. Gabe flicked through the channels on the television mindlessly. It was how he had spent the majority of the last few months. With Melinda and the kids gone, he no longer knew what to do with himself. Having taken little time off over the years, he'd had quite the bank of sick days built up and had decided to cash them in. He knew he would be unable to focus on work, but he hadn't expected he'd be unable to focus on anything else as well. When his phone vibrated beside him, he glanced at the screen and sighed. His boss. Though he did not want to talk to her, he couldn't afford to lose this job, and she probably wanted to know when he would be coming back. He didn't really have an answer, but he swiped the screen to take the call anyway. "Hello? Gabe?" Surprise colored her voice even through the phone, and he could almost picture her pinched forehead and arched brows. "Are you okay?" What a question. Was he okay with the love of his life and his children gone? No. Was he okay with no answer as to where they went or who took them? No. Was he physically okay and able to take care of himself? That was debatable. Define okay. She sighed. "I'm sorry about your family, Gabe. We all lost someone in the disappearances, but I need you to come back to work." "Why?" "I'm sure you've heard on the news about the INCAV." He had, though he had paid little attention to it. What did it matter to him anyway? "Well, we have a patient who tested positive in Washington State, and we're receiving samples to analyze tomorrow. I need my best people on this, and you are one of the best." A tiny spark of enthusiasm flickered in Gabe. It felt like it had been so long since something had interested him, and studying the new virus was interesting. But was it interesting enough? He took a moment to look around the room. Discarded clothes and trash lay about the room, and dirty dishes sat piled on the nearby tables. He hadn't even gathered the energy to take them to the kitchen. It was clear that something had to change. Perhaps feeling useful again would be it. He could throw himself into his work, and this time there would be no one to disappoint when he missed dinner or came home late. "Okay," he said. "I'll be in tomorrow." "Great. And Gabe? Clean up first." He wasn't sure how she knew, but perhaps it was only an educated guess on her part. It certainly wouldn't have been a leap. "I will,"